What is up, guys? Kyle Smith, Arizona drummer here, and welcome to Behind the Kit, episode 7. Today's guest is none other than Mr. Brendan Buckley. Now, you may know him from playing with Julio Iglesias Jr., you may know him from playing with Tegan and Sara, maybe with Morrissey, but most notably, he has been playing with Shakira for over 25 years. He is an incredibly talented drummer, extremely versatile, and when I think of Brendan Buckley, I think of professional. He sets the bar for what it means to be a professional drummer in our industry, and he carries himself just that way. So I'm so stoked and honored to have my good friend, Brendan Buckley, here on the channel. In fact, just a couple months ago, Brendan actually invited me out to the Shakira show, where I got to see him play live and in action and killing it up on stage here at Phoenix Arena. So Brendan, thank you again, and the whole Shakira team for bringing me and Mrs. Arizona drummer out to come and see the live performance. It was truly something special, so thank you again for that. Now, before we get into the interview, if you'd like to support the channel, please make sure to check out our merch store. We have all kinds of t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, shorts, mugs, all kinds of stuff here on the store that you can purchase, and that revenue comes right back to the channel, where I can continue to invest in making videos like this, doing more factory tours, more interviews, picking up gear for the studio for us to review, and all kinds of new and fun things that we can do to continue to expand and grow the channel. As well as, if you'd like to subscribe to my Patreon, we have 2 different levels of membership, one at $5, one at $10, and they come with all kinds of perks, early releases, behind the scenes, exclusive footage, name shoutouts, Q&As, live streams, and everything in between. There's so much value here, and again, that investment comes right back to the channel, where I can continue to grow and provide the best content I can for each and every one of you. Now, if you're already a Patreon member and you already have all the AZD and Behind the Kit merch you can get your hands on, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing these videos. They really help continue to grow the channel. It doesn't cost you anything other than a little bit of time, and of course, it helps us grow and continue to make more of this awesome content for you. So with that being said, I'll shut up. Let's get into the interview with one of the best drummers out there, Mr. Brendan Buckley. Here we go. Hello everybody, it's Kyle Smith, Arizona drummer here, and I am so honored to be joined by Mr. Brendan Buckley. Brendan, thank you so much for joining the channel.
It's totally my pleasure. Thanks for touching base.
Of course, and I'll just tell you, and again, I try not to lay the cheese on too thick in these conversations, but what I'll say is this is a huge honor for me. I discovered you, a couple of years ago, and I actually messaged you. I remember I was doing the YouTube stuff where you're kind of just looking at drummers, live performances, and I saw you with Morrissey, and I saw you with Shakira, and I remember I just had to message you, and I sent you something. I was like, you might have just become my favorite drummer, and that's kind of, I feel like, how our relationship started. But you really have played with some of the most iconic and eclectic artists in the world, and honestly, one of the things I admire the most about you is just how effortlessly you shift between genres, musical environments, and you've created a career that I think feels kind of like a blueprint for what a lot of us aspire to, which is you kind of blend perfectly consistency, which is key, but your creativity and everything you play and the way you approach the instrument is just deeply musical. So to have you on the channel, like I said, is a true honor. So again, I just want to say thank you, and I'm really looking forward to kind of diving into your background and seeing what kind of fun we can get into along the way.
Well, sure. Well, those are really kind words, and I appreciate it. That means a lot to me, honestly. I love the drums. I love other drummers. I love talking about drumming, and the fact that anyone else out there thinks I'm doing a decent job, it actually means a lot because of how much I enjoy our craft.
Absolutely. So that's a perfect segue. What got you into the drums? Like, what's your first memory of being like, yes, this is what I want to do?
I think it probably started when I was a kid and I was watching a lot of MTV, a lot of heavy metal and new wave. This is all the rock bands that were on MTV in the mid to late 80s. I think I watched a lot of that, and I was just into music before I was into drums. I was into music. I played piano lessons. I played trumpet in the school orchestra, but that was not the same as what I would see on MTV. Guys playing guitar, bass, drumming. I'm like, that is awesome. And I think when I noticed that in my middle school there was a drum set in the corner of the room that nobody was using, I said, oh, maybe during my lunch breaks I can go over and just kind of putz around on that a little bit and just figure out some beats. And that's really where it all started. I would eat a quick lunch in eighth grade, and then I'd run down to the band room, and I go like beats like that you can just
Yeah.
figure it out on your own, like, and just kind of imitating what I saw. I loved it so much. And then, so by the time I was 14, I convinced my mother to allow me to buy a used drum set. I found a guy in my small town in New Jersey. I found a guy who was selling his kit because he was upgrading. So he sold me his
Mhm.
Pearl Export, and then I had that in the garage, and that's when it really just took over my life. Every day after school, I would come home, put on my headphones, and try to figure out a new beat or a new fill or some new pattern. I don't know. And it was a puzzle. It was an activity. It was therapeutic. Everything about it I loved.
Yeah, I love the way you say it's like a puzzle, because it is. And again, I'm not going to take anything away from any other instrument or any other musician out there, but drums really is one of those things where you sit behind it and you're like, I know, I hear it in my head, and I now need to figure out how to solve the equation almost of like what foot is doing what hand is doing what to get the feel right. And it's funny, just a quick side story. My wife yesterday, she was in here and she's like, hey, can you teach me how to do just anything on the drums? And I'm like, sure. So I teach her the, doots, cuts, that type of thing. And it's, fun to watch. And she's like, oh, this is really frustrating. I can't figure this out. And so she's like, show me. So I go behind the kit and I do it. And she's like, why does it sound good when you do it? And I'm like, well, I've been playing for 30 years, that's one. But then two, I'm like, it's feel and your personality and your groove and kind of what you've learned by, again, going in the garage and learning the beats and figuring out your feel and your sound. And it was just a fun way to kind of like watch somebody who's never done it before try to figure that out. And like, again, like kind of like a puzzle, like how do I map this? That I'm talking about like one eanda, and she's like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
She's
What is
like,
that
you put letters.
language?
Yeah.
What a language
But,
you're speaking.
I think one of the things that's interesting too, and we talked about this right before we hit record, but you mentioned that, you were born in New Jersey, lived in Miami for a while, then now are in LA. How do you think those places shaped your musical identity? We've talked a lot about feel and personality, but sometimes our environment also can kind of get infused into that.
Oh, I would say that's entirely true if I look back. I mean, New Jersey, that shaped me because, I mean, it's a beautiful state to live. I grew up in a great town, and I think it's very close to Manhattan where I live. So
Mhm.
it was very common for my parents to take me into Manhattan to see a Broadway show or to see. There's always art going on in there, lots of jazz, and then I guess New Jersey at that time had a big hair metal scene, so there were rock bands
Oh
everywhere.
yeah.
So everyone had a rock band, and I think that's cool too to see all these people that you look up to, like maybe 3 or 4 years older than you. They all had bands, so that
Yeah.
was a big thing in Jersey. Everyone had a band, and so I wanted to have a band in my garage too. So that was great living there, and that's also where I met my first real drum teacher, Tommy Igo, because he's from Jersey. So I
Mhm.
studied with him when I was there. Moving to Miami, you can imagine complete culture shock with the
Yeah.
the Latin vibe that they have there.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew very little about that when I went to the music school down there, the University of Miami Frost
Mhm.
School of Music. So living there and meeting all these people from all around the planet. I had friends from South America, the Caribbean, Europe, everywhere, and we're all learning and sharing and trading ideas. It was fantastic for me. It opened up my mind and my ears and my soul to all these different kinds of music. And then I think maybe at a certain point, maybe my late 20s, I was really heavily influenced by studio drummers. I loved
Mhm.
guys I mean, it probably started with people like Steve Gadd or something, but then everyone else that could do that too. The Jeff Porcaros, the Vinnie Colaiutas, the Carlos Vegas, Sean Pelton, Steve Jordan, Matt Chamberlain, Abe Jr., Josh Freese, all these guys that I thought were like in the studios making records.
Mm-hmm.
That was incredible to me that they were just so highly skilled, and uh, their styles could vary from album to album. I was very fascinated with that. So I was just checking out every new recording. I was into CDs and studios and drum tones and things like that. And I think that led me to go to LA, which had a very high level of guys recording drums. I mean, Jay Belrose was really popular at that time. He still is, but I mean, he was the it guy when I moved to LA. Jim Keltner is another one. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
legendary Hal Blaine. He was part of the Wrecking Crew out there. So you can think about all these guys. I met Kurt Buscara. He was fantastic when I moved there. Just great studio drummers. And that's kind of what led me to LA, was to also have a little bit of that. I had like the New Jersey rock thing, I had the Miami Latin thing, and then I wanted to have the LA kind of studio maturity of tone, groove, all the things that they had in that city.
Absolutely. And it's funny, you just said a word that rings very true for me, which is maturity. And I say that because my little slogan, I guess, for my brand is professionalism, maturity, and grace. So if you lead with those three things, you can pretty much accomplish whatever you need, so long as you're also consistent and have discipline. But I say that because my upbringing in music was pretty similar, in the sense of I started on the very far spectrum of death metal, progressive metal, math metal. I was coming up, I'm you got to be the fastest guy, fastest double bass, fastest fills, all that stuff. And I was doing that up until I was 21. And then I got the call, hey, we're having baby. And so, I put the passions aside for a little bit, focused on that. And coming back, what's great about coming back older and having the maturity is, and then obviously opening yourself up, you said opening up your ears and your soul to different types of music, it allows you to, I think, become a better musician. It allows you to become a better collaborator. And even looking at guys like Jeff Porcaro, Josh Freese, all the folks that you mentioned, what is it about them that makes them so solid and so sought after, and it's, to your point, it's the groove, it's the feel, it's their sound, it's all those different things. And maturity, I think, is just such an important thing, especially when we're talking about how to get the gig and then how to keep it. Because, a lot of drummers, and again, I'll fault myself in this too. We're hearing it, we're getting excited, and we'll do a crazy fill or we'll do something silly. But what makes those professionals, what makes you consistent, what makes you sought after, is the fact that you can be mature in those situations. You can give into the music, not into yourself. And I think recognizing it's not about you in those situations. So again, you say that word maturity, just immediately, flags for me is I think just a crucial skill set for any successful drummer or anybody who wants to get employed in this industry. And so I have to ask you this, you mentioned Tommy Igoe as probably one of your key mentors, I think, probably getting you started and shaping your path. But are there any other mentors that come to mind for you, as far as these are the folks who just really set me on this path of there is no alternative, drums is my future, and that's what I'm doing?
As far as a career choice, no. I wasn't, when I was younger, and I would say maybe the ages from 16 to 21, I wasn't actually thinking about how I was going to do this for a career. I was still in the mode of, how can I just explore the instrument, get better at the instrument? I just wanted to play with people. I wanted to be good enough to play with people and not get fired. I wasn't thinking, how can I build my career? I was, I could have easily reached the age of 22 and said, I love the drums, but I'm going to do this for a job. It's something else.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of, how do I do this to make money for the rest of my life too? It was more just a serious hobby or passion of mine. So I had mentors that, pushed me towards getting better at music, but not towards a business side of things. Like, this is what you need to do to earn enough money to live. I didn't really have that. I think I was just fortunate that I kept a super low overhead, and I was I led an ascetic lifestyle, and it worked for me when I was in those lean years. Um, but I do have mentors in general, gurus, and people that I look towards that really changed my life. One person in particular was a percussionist named Rafa Padilla, who had passed away a couple of years ago, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. Um, but he was a fantastic friend and teacher to me. He was a little older than me, and we did a tour together with Shakira from around 2002 to 2004. I think we were in the same band, and he was kind of legendary because he had spent many years playing in the Gloria Estefan sound machine in their heyday.
Oh, yep.
So for him to come in, I not only wanted to learn more about Cuban rhythms and things, but he's like, that's not as important as the pocket, the groove, the sound. It doesn't matter what pattern we're playing, as long as it feels good and it sounds good, it locks, it. And we talked about pocket and groove so much, and he had his own opinions about things, and I would just eat it up. We'd go out for a walk, whatever city we were in, say we're in Rome. It's like, let's go for a walk. We'll grab a cappuccino. And I'm like, yes, sir. And I would just follow him around like a puppy dog, listening to him spout wisdom on music, about everything. He was deeply entrenched in the LA studio scene at the time, doing a lot of records. So I would ask him about, what's it like to work with this drummer? What's it like to work with this drummer? I learned so much from him. And some of the things that I took were, for instance, he used to talk about compensating in a bad way. He would say, a lot of people, when the show's not going well, they try to compensate. What do? They try to play louder. They try to play faster. They try to play busier because they think, oh, it's not going well enough. He goes, I suggest we do the opposite. If you feel like the audience isn't super on our side tonight, or things aren't really working, we're not as tight, let's get tighter. Yeah. Let's sink into the groove more. Let's put our heads down and really play together. Really believe in the arrangements. Really believe in the musicians on stage. Like, let's all not just say, I don't know, yesterday was better than today. Let's all play more. Let's all play more. He's like, that's immaturity. So he had this whole idea of like, and he was like, let's record every show and we'll listen to it and we'll see if it sounds good. Not what do we think felt good, or let's have some evidence. Let's actually record a board mix and see, is this song grooving? Does this song sound good? Are the fills locking in this song? Does this, and he had that more, again, that studio approach. Like, does it sound good on tape? Not, do I think it was a good show? Let's have some evidence, some fact-based way of checking if it were a good show. So we would do that. We would record video or audio and listen and say, song 1 was great. Song 2 was great. 3, we can get a little better. 4 was great. 5 was great. 6, let's work on this. Or you can tell that this isn't happening here. Or, I loved it. I mean, I was so young at the time, and I had this guy teaching me this other approach. There were a lot of lessons in there that really sunk in, and some didn't even manifest till later. Like, I remember him talking about this, but it didn't really kick in until 8 years later or 10 years later, where I really started to get it.
Yeah, I love that, because especially when you're touring, you're playing every night, maybe every other night. You're like, okay, I'm playing the however many songs, whatever it is, and you can kind of get lost a little bit sometimes. And like, you do your rehearsal, but maybe that song could have been, to your point, tighter, or maybe we didn't have the energy or whatever it is. So to be able to go back and say, hey, let's pinpoint as a group collectively where we can put on the best show possible. One of the things we were talking about in one of the other interviews is like, a part of our job as musicians, not even just drummers, but is to help create that connection between the artist and the audience, and to hold it the whole show. Like, one of the things, I think the easiest way, in my opinion, to lose a gig is to be the reason that connection gets broken. And if somebody's like, ooh, let me watch the drummer instead of listening to the vocalist, or wait, what just happened? That was confusing. Like, it takes them out of the moment. And so, like, I love that, because whether it's you're listening to whether or not the song was tight enough, or just truly like, are we fostering that connection? And to your point, if you tighten in and focus on musicianship and locking in together, like the audience is going to pick up on that too. Like, oh, the band's really into this. Like, this is fun, for us to do. So like, that's one of the great things, when I started doing the YouTube stuff, you don't have any choice. I'm sitting here editing my own, recordings, my own videos, and I'm like, oh, that could have been better. Oh, that's a little rough. And, now I have almost 6 years of of what do I want to call it, archives, where I can go back and watch, like, okay, this is how I've improved mixing and mastering the sound. This is how I've improved the camera editing, and maybe also my performance. But and it's so I love that's the approach that you guys take. And it's funny because, again, that's how I found you, was looking at videos of drum cams of you playing along to, like I said, Morrissey and Shakira, and I think sounds like that's maybe something you still do today, is record yourself and kind of look back and maybe analyze where you can either improve or maybe do something different or maybe learn from your shows. And maybe I'm looking into it, but I'm curious, is that still something you kind of implement today?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Absolutely. There's a couple things you said there that are really important. One is, for practice purposes, it's very important to record you either audio or video to really get an outside look at how you're doing as a drummer, mechanically, sonically. It's actually something I used to do years ago when we used to have little cassette Walkmans. I would bring a cassette Walkman to all of my gigs and just throw it under my drum throne, and I'd hit record and play the gig. And then I pack up my drums, and on the way home, I throw that cassette in the stereo, a car stereo, and drive home and listen. And it helped me kind of remove the inner monologue of, am I playing well? Am I sucking? Am I playing well? Am I sucking? While I'm playing the gig. When you're playing the gig, you should just be focused on being in the moment and playing with your musicians on stage. And like you said, connecting with the audience, sounding good, working on whatever you guys rehearsed or didn't rehearse if it's improvisational. And then the critical cap can go on the way home. Yeah. Now you're driving, you're like, those ghost notes are crap. Or well, I need to work on that shuffle a little bit. That swing, my swing feels a little off for this thing. It's a little too tight. Or things you can notice as a listener, not as while you're playing. That's important, and I think people should do that. And there's so many ways you can do that with your iPhone or with your home studio or anything. And but as far as doing drum videos, I started because I tour a lot internationally. A lot of my friends have no idea what I'm doing. Even my close friends are like, where were you last month? I'm like, I was in Malaysia for a couple of weeks playing with this artist. Really? Who? And I'm like, yeah. And a lot of this would happen. I was in Brazil working with this artist down there. And I was like a mystery man in LA. My friends wouldn't even know what I'm doing. I'm like, I swear I'm not in the CIA. I'm a working drummer. I swear. But I don't think they believe me sometimes. And I thought, maybe I need to every now and then have some evidence that I actually am performing and playing, not just, I don't know, whatever they think I'm doing. Disappearing. So I think I would take like a cheap camera that had a video option on it. This camera actually records videos, and I would just put it on a tripod or give it to my drum tech, and I'd say, hey, can you shoot, I don't know, a couple songs? And then I would figure out how to use an early version of iMovie. I don't even know what it was called back then. And I would chop it up, and then I would, put it on an early version of YouTube. And, I had no intentions on building an audience or anything. I just thought, well, this is just who I am today. On this date. This is what I did on this date, like a diary. Not trying to show the coolest thing I can do, like, oh, this is something I'm working on, or this is the best fill I've ever done in my life. It was just, oh, this was me playing in Shanghai last night, one song with this artist. That was it. And I think it was also therapeutic for me to not feel like I have to impress anyone. I don't need to show the coolest lick I've ever figured out in my life. I just need to show what I'm doing this week. This is what I'm doing this week. This is who I'm working with, or this is where I am, or this is the music I'm playing this month, or something very simple like that. It's more realistic to what I do. This is what I do right now, and I'm going to do something different 6 months from now and 6 months from then. But this is what I sound like right now, or this is the gig I'm doing, and it was good for me to not have to feel like I have to be someone else. I can actually be more of myself. This is me. This is even more of me. This is actually even more of what I do. And I was fully prepared for massive trolls and haters, and that really didn't come. And I was surprised actually. I'm like, people are going to despise these videos, and no one really hated them. So I'm like, all right, so I'll do a couple more, and then I would do them with Tegan and Sara, or I went on tour with an actress named Leighton Meester, and people really liked them. And I any gig I did, I'm like, well, I'll make sure when I'm on this gig, I'll record a couple videos and put it up just so they say, oh, this is me playing with this artist. This is me playing with this artist. I also thought it was fun to show what a stage looked like from my point of view, not an audience in the front row, a person in the audience capturing what it sounds like getting bombarded by a PA. And I'm like, that's not really what I do. What I do looks more like this. So I'd make sure it was more from my angle looking outward. And this is what it sounds like in my little area. Yeah, those open hi-hats are really loud where I am.
Yeah.
And this is what the stage looks like. This is the communication that goes on between the MD and the bassist and me, and there's the audience, going up and down on cranes. And yeah, this is what's going on in my world. And I think maybe that also people liked. So I always try to keep those two elements of, I'm just showing songs, beats I play for songs, featuring artists with whom I work. And I'm trying to show it from my perspective.
You said a couple things in there that really got my gears going, which, first, like recording, listening back when you're playing live, that was kind of the first thing. And it's funny you mentioned that. So, growing up in like the metal side of things where it's play is the craziest thing you can. As I started to switch back over into coming out of, I'll call it retirement, but coming out of retirement and doing this again, the first gig back was a metal band, but I listened back and I'm like, I am overplaying these fills. I am taking the audience out of this song. It's a metal song, but even still, I'm hearing it. The next band I was in was the one I toured, US and Europe with, and that band had a singer who sounded just like Danzig. I used to say Metallica and Danzig had a baby, that was the band. And it's really fast punk metal stuff. But again, the focus is the singer. And if I'm playing too fast, because we didn't play to a click with that band, typically that's obviously my preference, but with that band, they wanted it raw and in your face. But again, if you're playing too fast, he can't breathe, he can't get the next note out, you're breaking the connection with the audience. So again, listening back, I'm like, okay, I'm playing too quick, these fills are sounding sloppy because I can't play them that fast, really tightening up my performance. So by the time I ended up leaving that band to kind of focus more on what I'm doing now, our sets were as close to the album as you could get with a little bit of fun in between. But to your point, that's the value of being able to record yourself and listen. And, in certain cases, I would film a show with a chest cam so you could see the audience, and see this is exactly what I'm going through. But back to what you mentioned, I don't have to impress anybody. I love that you said that because there's two things that came to mind. One, when I first started doing the YouTube stuff, I'm like, I want to impress. That was my first thought. It was like, I want people to think I'm a good drummer. It was coming out of not doing this for over a decade. I'm like, God, I just want people to think I'm good. And now, 5-6 years later, I'm like, this is just my interpretation of this song today. I might listen to this song 6 months from now and be like, oh, I want to do this now instead and do, a different version of it. And a lot of the times I will overplay because it's YouTube and people are looking at the drums and that's the show that today. But to your point, I'm worried about, am I happy with my performance? Did I be true to myself and did I put out what I think makes the most sense for whatever I was feeling at the time? So it's kind of like a diary, a resume, whatever you want to call it, all wrapped into one. But there's something else you said that really got me going, which was, you mentioned this is my office almost. This is what it looks like from my perspective. And what I love about that was in that first video I saw of you, the first thing that came to mind wasn't, gosh, he's tight or he has incredible groove or I love the pattern he's playing. It was like, this is one of the most professional drummers I've ever seen. And it was, I think for me, it was your control, your consistency. Every hit was consistent. It was clean. You were focused on the groove. It was, you could tell you were into it, you were having a good time, but you were just locked in. And I remember that was my first thought, was God, that's a professional drummer. That's what it looks like to be at that level and have that gig. And I'm curious, obviously, like you said, you've played with dozens and dozens of artists all around the world, But what about your first major gig? Like, what was that? What was that moment that kind of launched you into, okay, not only high profile touring, but like international touring? And kind of how did that process go around audition, getting there? What did it feel like once you were there? Like all the fun stuff in between.
Well, if I think back, I think my first international gig was probably when I toured with the singer Julio Iglesias, who, if you know, he's like I don't know how old he is now, but older Spanish balladeer.
Mm-hmm.
This happened when I was living in Miami. I had just gotten out of music school, and I was gigging a lot locally, trying to be one of the best local drummers in Miami. Not trying to be one of the best, trying to be amongst the best, because there were a lot of great drummers there. One of my favorite drummers in Miami was a guy named Lee Levin. There's a lot of other great drummers in Miami, and I was just trying to learn from them, and have a career in Miami at the time. Playing with a bunch of bands. I was playing with a band called Fulano. I was doing more recordings, which is great. I would get called to go into a different studio. I'm going to do this session, do that session. I play a lot of gigs at night. I played 7 days a week, sometimes 3 gigs a night. I would do a jazz trio gig at 8 p.m. and then I'd do some cover band until 12 p.m. and then go play with a rock band at midnight. And it was so much fun. And then I was doing a recording session once, and the phone call in the studio rang, and the producer picked it up. He's like, yeah, okay. Yeah. And he looked over at me. He's like, Julio Iglesias is looking for a new keyboardist and drummer. Do you know a keyboardist? And are you available to audition on drums? I'm like, absolutely. I know a keyboardist that I went to college with, and I would love to audition. So they FedExed me a 90-minute cassette tape of a live show and said, learn the first 6 songs and fly to Tampa and go to one of their sound checks and go sit in. That's your audition. So I did that, and showed up at the sound check. They said, hi, I'm the drummer auditioning today. They're like, oh yeah, come on in. And we rehearsed the first 6 songs, and Julio walked on stage. He says, it sounds great. You'll do the show tonight. And I'm like, oh, do the show tonight. I only know the first 6 songs of your show. He goes, okay, then you'll do the first 6 songs tonight, and the other drummer will finish the night. And I'm like, okay. So I ran across the street, got an all-black outfit, and came and I did the first 6 songs. And that was a great experience for me. I was taking over for a great drummer who was leaving. And at that point, they were on in-ears, so they had to quickly make me a set of in-ears. I had one of those thrones with a thumper on it. I'd never used one of those before.
You're like, whoa.
There were sequences. They had a digital performer, old Macintosh computer running sequences. There were samplers. I had a drum cat that would fire off different samples throughout the show for certain parts. There was strangely an ADAT. You remember ADAT machines? They were like, they looked like VHS tapes, and that was to play certain kinds of pre-recorded audio that was not in the computer. It was like, and I remember I had to hit that for certain things. It was a very complicated show to learn. And on top of all that, there were other challenges. Julio spoke 6 languages, so he would always talk to the audience in different languages. I didn't know what song was coming up next sometimes. I'm like, he would go off the set list, and I'm looking around like, sometimes he would call a song I'd never learned before, and they would just look at me and just like go like tell me the tempo and just come in. It doesn't matter. Just play something. Yeah. I'm like, I didn't know what to do sometimes, but it was great. And then I played in that band for 6 months. The other guys in the band were super pro, so I asked them a ton of questions. I think I was 22 at the time. And then we did Australia, New Zealand, South America, like Argentina, Brazil. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And then I went straight from that gig into starting the Shakira gig.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds, like what a kind of cool opportunity. You do the audition like, all right, you're doing it now. You're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm on. But that speaks to preparation, I think. Like, to your point, you got set the cassette, you did the work, you learned the 6 songs, you came in, you crushed it, and you were ready to go. Like, I always joke about that. So really, just quick side story. I recently auditioned to join Daughtry. Great experience, great guys. Honestly, really wonderful experience. Didn't get the gig. That's part of the deal, but that was fine. But I learned the set because that's part of the deal. So I learned their 90-minute headlining set because I'm like, I want to be able to, should they call me up and they need me tomorrow, I can go. And so they were just here in Phoenix, and I was joking with Chris after the show that like they're playing their songs and I'm sitting there air drumming the whole time because I'm like, I prepared, like I should know this stuff. But to your point, like that's part of doing the work, is like you need to be able to come in and play. Even in audition, you need to be able to play the songs like you're going to play them live. Like if you get called today to do it. I know it's not typically how it happens, but like that just speaks to your preparation, that you were able to like jump in and play the show that day. And then, it sounds pretty complicated as far as all the different nuances that you had to kind of learn. And one of the things that I think it's, I don't want to say maybe lost, but that's not recognized, is a lot of times the drummer is responsible not only for the simple things like count off and keeping time, but samples and backing tracks and keeping sure that the actual production is flowing. It's not just the instrument. And one of the things I've noticed is a lot of MDs are typically drummers or have drumming experience, and I think that there's a correlation between those two things because they're having to think about the whole show. Do you find that now with, excuse me, with Shakira and Morrissey and some of the other gigs, Tegan and Sara, the gigs that you're playing with, do you find that that's still very true, that you're kind of driving the production? Or is it a little bit more kind of wide spanned out to maybe additional folks that are out there kind of queuing some of those things up?
To a certain degree, yes. If you allow me to be a control freak on stage, I will assume that role. Absolutely assume that role. But it's much easier if we divide up the labor. Like, so he's in charge of that, I'm in charge of this, that guy's going to do that. It's much better that way. But if you're in a situation where you realize no one's good at that except for you, then you need to grab the reins and go with it. And I look at it like you said, we're drummers. Our early years of drumming is all about coordination, right? Okay, I'm going to hit the snare, but I'm also going to do a little rim click, a lacrosse stick here, and then I'm going to reach over. It's open hi-hat here. I'm going to hit the X hat over here for this section, and I'm going to there's a little bell here. How can I fit that bell in? Work on the coordination. Got it. Okay. I mean, drumming is like you're learning these patterns. How can I do this? How can I do this? You can just look at it like I need to add a few more things. At a certain point, I have to cue this guy, the lighting guy, and I have to push play on the sequencer. That's two more things I have to do. And I do it right here. In between songs, I switch the song from this to this on the computer. Done. There are just a few more steps in the coordination that you're already learning. You learn kick, snare, hat patterns. Now just add a little bit more into there. Like, here's where I hit this sampler now too. It's very simple. You just add a few more elements. It's already there in how we approach music. Some people ask me like, you're doing so much on the drum riser. How do you do that? I'm like, well, I just practiced it. I practiced it like, if you're playing a show and the song ends and I have just enough time to tune up my snare drum again because it's getting a little loose, wipe my forehead with a towel, have a sip of water, and then count off the next song. You know that. So so it becomes second nature. Bow, room, crank, crank, crank. 1, 2, 3. It's like that. It's just that multiplied times more and more tasks. Okay, between this song, I have to walk up to the front of stage and do this thing. Between this song and this song, I have to do. They're just a few more tasks that you learn, and it becomes choreography. You just learn it.
Yeah.
You learn it like what is possible and what's not possible within these spans of time. So I think in the beginning, it could be overwhelming. You want me to do all of these things? And then you figure out, I just have to put my stick under my armpit, go like this, and then go boom, and then back again. Or, if any drummer can figure out how to tighten their hi-hat clutch while playing a beat and not lose the beat, then they can do all these other things. Because that's annoying, and that happens to everyone. Your hi-hat's falling apart, you're like, oh, shoot. And you're like, we've all gone through that.
Yep.
It's that times another 10 things.
Or a stand falling down, or a snare breaking, whatever, right? It's like I just got to keep going.
And keep going.
it's one of those things too where this will be very short, but I was just doing a festival gig a couple months ago. The click stops working, and it's like that's where preparation kicks in, and you're okay, turn it off, just keep going, just keep playing the song. Nobody else needs to know. In this case, it was just the singer and I on the click. So she turns around, I'm like, we're good, I got this, don't worry, just follow me and we're good. But to your point, like, I think you said choreography, and I think that's 100% true. Like, the show, the production, whatever you want to call it, is not just, okay, here's song 1, here's song 2, here's song 3. It's the entire experience for the artist, for the audience, for everybody involved. And a lot of the times it does make the most sense because, again, we are the keeper of the time. So if we need to kick off a sample for a song, we're going to know, I think, I don't want to say better, but we're going to know because of the timing component of it, where that should fall, where it should land, when to turn it off. And when something goes wrong, it's on us to make sure the show continues. And so I think that, when it comes to having to turn it off, that's also really important to kind of have that with us. And, I think one of the things I noticed, especially on the Shakira gig, at least, and I don't know if this is always the case, but on this current tour, you'll have 2 setups, it looks like. You have your main kit where you're in the back, rocking out, and then there's one where you bring it up to the front. Looks like a little bit more percussion style, kind of. It's a smaller, I think, DW Design Flyer series kit is what I think it is. Yeah, and so I'm just curious, one, kind of what led to that. I'm curious also how the Shakira gig started, but also, like, when you're thinking about the production, right? Because we're talking about the whole thing, not just the song to song. What kind of made you go, you know what? I want to have this second kit up here. I want to kind of come up in the front with the audience, have this more intimate experience where, we're kind of taking a different approach, during this section of the show. But again, I'll stop talking because I want to hear from you.
Okay. I guess every gig is different. With the Shakira gig, anything you see happening on stage, 9 times out of 10, it comes from Shakira, or if not her, the MD, Tim Mitchell. If not him, it would be the show designers. They always hire a company to kind of come up with the look of the stage. It's never me. I never say, you know what? I want to set up a second drum set in the front of the stage. I would never say that in a million years. I want to be under the stage hiding. But so everything that's happening on stage is because they send you a set list of possible songs. These are the 38 songs we're learning for the rehearsals. Okay, we might not do all 38, but this is the batch of songs we're thinking about doing for the tour. We're not sure the order yet or the arrangements. We're currently working on the arrangements. So I show up at the rehearsals being really familiar with these 38 songs, and we start working on them. We start saying, am I going to play this on an acoustic rock kit? Am I going to sample all the sounds in this song and play them on a Roland kit? Are we going to do some kind of other version, maybe an unplugged version of the song that we haven't even thought of yet? So that second kit you're talking about was because she said, you know what, I want to do this one song, and I think it'd be cool to do a more unplugged version. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, great, we can do that. She's like, so maybe, what do you think you should play? I'm like, well, the song starts off with bongos, so I can do that. So, okay, great. We're rehearsing, and halfway through the song, she's like, now what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to play bongos because it needs to come up a level. I'm like, okay, well, you want me to play a cajon or something? It's like, and she's like, well, what did you do on the last tour? On the last tour, I played brushes on a snare drum and bass drum. She goes, well, do that then. I'm like, here? All right, well, then I would have to get I can't run back there, so let me get a second kit right here so I can do the first half of the song on bongos, and then when you want it to go up one level, I'll have a small kind of jazz kit where I can do kick snare with brushes. Perfect. And then the show designers were flipping out because they're like, we can't have drums up there, it's too much. I'm like, let me get the smallest drum set I can order from DW, and it'll be seamless, So I called up a couple guys from DW. I'm like, I need a kind of earthy, woodsy looking drum set, but it has to be super portable because they don't want a real drum set up there. They want it to be like, just like something you could throw in the trunk of a car kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So they sent me that flyer kit. They're like, we have something perfect. It all comes together. So that's what we got for the rehearsals. Everyone loved it. The arrangement was perfect. We're like, problem solved. It was a problem. It was her vision. I had to kind of make it happen, and I had to make it happen in a way where everyone logistically liked it too. Like, do we have enough time to make this happen? I'm like, we'll have enough time if I get the right components, and all the mics on that are wireless, so they're just clipped onto the drums.
Nice.
So they just get turned on for that one song, boom, and they get taken off. So like we had to think about everything that would make it work the way she wanted it to work. So that's how that happens. A lot of things happen because we're rehearsing, and she has an idea, and I have to try to figure out how to make her idea, become a reality.
And I think that speaks to the professionalism, and again, I'm trying not to, I say this all the time, but over cheese you, but the professionalism on that is so crucial, because the artist comes to you and says, this is my vision, this is what I think is going to make this connection to the audience the strongest, which I think is the part that, again, is our job, right? That's the priority number one. And you not only were like, hey, here are some suggestions, here's things we can do. You went straight into problem-solving mode based off experience, knowledge, preparation, all those things. And I was talking to Brian Fraser Moore about this the other day, about the importance of having good relationships with your endorsing companies. And, you're like, I know exactly what to do, DW, what's the solution here? And then they're like, here you go, you're good, we got it solved for you. Like, having that professionalism, not only with the production crew, with the artist, with your endorsing companies consistently, is what allowed that solution to be so seamless. And I think that's one of those things where, again, that I keep saying the word professionalism, but where it's just so crucial to have it and to make sure that you're building strong relationships. And so I'm just curious, obviously we talked about the current tour with Shakira, but like, how did the Shakira gig start? You came right off the last tour, but was it a situation where they found you, or you had a connection? Like, how did that kind of come about, and what was that audition process look like? Because I can imagine if I was in those shoes, I'd probably be sweating out of my shoes.
Just from the nerves.
It wasn't an audition per se. It was a recording session that I got called to do because I was living in Miami. Shakira came to Miami to do her record in 1998, one of her albums for Sony, and the engineer at the studio said, there's this girl coming in from Colombia that wants a quote-unquote rock drummer on her album. She doesn't want loops or anything. She wants a real rock drummer. And I thought, you'd be perfect for this. Would you like to come in and do it? I'm like, again, I'm always like, thank you for thinking of me. Sure. So I came in, I did one song, one track. It went really well. So they said, cool. Are you available this week to do a second one? Sure. I came in the next day, did a second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, sixth one. And then I thought, went pretty well. And then when that album was released, they said, would you like to do some of the CD release parties? I'm like, sure. Because I played on over half the record. Yeah. They asked me that. And then that went well. And they said, she's actually been booked to do an MTV Unplugged. Would you like to be part of the band for the MTV Unplugged? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we rehearsed for 2 weeks. We flew to New York and did an MTV Unplugged. And the guitarist, the keyboardist, and me are all from that band, the MTV Unplugged band. We've been in her band ever since.
Oh, nice. That's incredible. I have to imagine touring the world with that close, I guess, group of individuals has really been. They're more family now, I would say, than even coworkers.
They are more family to me than all of my, my blood relatives, because, we've just spent so much time together. So many ups and downs, not downs like, we're always great together, but life ups and downs, been through stuff, losing a family member or a breakup or something. We're always there for each other, and always there to make each other laugh, going through the stressful times together. So I don't know how much I can express how much I cherish those two guys, Tim and Albert. Man, they're absolutely gems of human beings. And I feel like if I could, when I'm 88 years old and I get to look back, I'm going to really cherish the friendship I got with those guys.
That's great. That's especially because, I like to think about playing drums or playing with a band as speaking the same language. It's when you find somebody that you just click with, that your feels are in line, the groove, you can play without even having to say a word, and what the next thing they're going to do is, and you just lock in with them. That kind of connection is, and maybe this sounds cheesy, but to me it's almost like a soulmate type thing. And obviously not in a romantic way, but in a musical way, it's like our souls resonate on the same frequency, and we're able to lock in a way that I can't do with others. Again, I can play musically, play professionally with whoever, but like that connection is so unique. And in that band I was in back in, before I retired, I had a guitar player just like that. It was one of those things where you could go in a room and play for 5 hours and never say a word, but say so much. You know what I mean? Like just the musical communication.
There's also an element where, I mean, it's a little easier to have a connection with someone where you have nothing but similarities, where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
we're the same age. We grew up in the same part of the country. We love all the same music. That's incredible. You're my friend, But it's a little stranger to have friends where you're all different ages. You grew up in different parts of the world. You have different life stories. You like different kinds of music. You actually have different musical sensibilities. But over time, you develop bonds and friendships, which is kind of like Tim Albert and me. Tim's from Detroit. He's a little older than I am. Albert's from Cuba. I used to be super intimidated by his musicianship because he's just a freaking maestro on the piano. And but through enough time together, we developed a strong mutual respect and love for one another, where it's a super tight bond now. Now I never have to even look at them on stage. I can hear them in my in-ears, and I know what mood they're in. I know what they're feeling, if they're feeling joyous or serious. I can tell just by their fingers, like how they're feeling that night, because we played together for so long. I have another friend I think of, this guitarist I toured with many tours with, named Greco Barato, fantastic Brazilian percussionist. And I only bring this story up because one time I was doing a session. I do a lot of sessions. Well, I don't want to say a lot. I do some sessions from my home studio. I have a home studio where people send me tracks and I play on tracks. And one time this producer sent me a song to play on. He goes, "Can you have this back to me by tomorrow?" I'm like, sure. He sent it to me. I'm playing and I'm listening to the song. I'm like, gosh, this sounds so familiar. I wonder if he hired my friend Greco to play guitar. It's just a rhythm, like a bang, get, like something like rhythm. And I sent the tracks in. I'm like, "Hey, who's that on guitar?" He goes, "Oh, it's some Brazilian guy named Greco." I'm like, I knew it. I could just tell by the feel of his rhythm guitar part. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible that I can just like I close my eyes, I put on headphones, and I feel like my friend's in the room with me.
Yeah.
And like that, you can develop that kind of bond with certain musicians.
It's funny you mentioned that because we talked a little bit about feel, and like I think one of the best, I can't remember who said this quote, but one of the best indications of a good musician or drummer is you can tell who they are just by listening to what they're doing, because they've just they've figured out their voice. And there's the language of music, but then there's the dialects, and there's the experience, and the equivalent of whatever you want to call it. But all of our experiences, all of our relationships, all of our influences all kind of intersect to become like this sound that we've created for ourselves. John Bonham is the first one that comes to mind. Like, it's John Bonham within 5 seconds of him playing the drums. Dave Grohl's another one. Josh Freese is another one. Like, those are all guys where you're like, okay, I know who this is. I don't even have to ask the question. And to your point, it's built through all of those things, but then even the connection that you have with whatever your connection is. I didn't know John Bonham, right? Like, obviously he had passed before I would have ever had a chance to meet him, but my connection with him is like, I respect, admire his playing so much that when I hear it, I'm like, I know who it is, and it makes me feel a certain way. And I think that to me is like one of the more crucial components. And I think for us, for musicians, we completely get it, but for maybe a general audience member who's connecting with the song, I think that can be something that's missed of like, well, we're also connecting back with you, because you might hear a song and think about your relative who passed away, and the person next to you might hear a song and think about their spouse, or the person next to you might think about how much they love their job, and it's all the same song. But everybody has this unique connection to whatever it is that you're playing. And, to be stewards of that, I think is the highest calling that we can have as musicians. And so, what I'll say to you, and again, you're incredibly humble. Like, and I say that because you are exceptional at your instrument, not just at playing the drums, but again, like I said, the first thing I thought about you, which made me go like, this guy might be my new favorite drummer, is that level of professionalism and consistency. And so I have to ask you, because, how do you stay so grounded and like adaptable over the years. Like you have toured the world with major artists, but I'm sitting here talking to you now, and again, you're like, it's another day in the office, you know, and I think it's important though to have that mindset, because again, excuse my language, but my other mantra is don't be a dick, right? Which is like, you know, like you can be you're hot shit, but like if that's what you present yourself with, like nobody's gonna want to work with you. So I'm just curious, like how do you stay so grounded? But then also, were there moments in your career where you still kind of pinch yourself and you get goosebumps of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this?
Let me think. I mean, it's hard to talk about yourself and say, let me explain to you how I'm so humble. There's no way to say that without sounding like a jerk. So let me say that I don't think about it as being humble as much as I don't consider myself exceptional. Not that I don't think I play well, but I don't consider myself an exceptional human being. I consider myself a human being. And I'm surrounded by other human beings that are all trying to get through life and trying to get through life as well as they can to the best of their capacities. Some are failing, some are exceeding. And I think that's one thing I think about is, you know, I never wake up and say, I'm the greatest. That doesn't come out of my mouth, those words, you know. I just get up and say, well, you know, what do I have to do today? Today's a Sunday. Let me just attack Sunday with, you know, the best of my ability. And I think, I guess fortunately I'm surrounded by a lot of people that are like that too. I'm not surrounded by a bunch of divas and stuff. So I think that helps. I think that I have a strong love for the drums and drumming. I don't have a strong love for fame or notoriety or anything like that, or even you know, I never wanted to be the wealthiest drummer. I never wanted to be the most famous drummer. I just wanted to be someone who can play the drums well, you know, to the point where other musicians would want to work with me. That's more of my goal. And that kind of was always my driving factor. Maybe that's not the factor for a lot of other musicians, but that's mine. Is like I thought, what things can I do on a daily or weekly or monthly or yearly basis to move closer to this goal of being able to perform the drums well on the drums to the point where other people want to make music with me. If you simplify it like that, that's a nice way to look at your craft, right? And then everything else just kind of gets pushed to the side a little bit. So and it helps me look at other drummers that are trying to do the same thing, and I feel, you know, we have something in common. That's why I love the drum brotherhood, because for the most part, I meet drummers and we all have that in common. There's something nerdy about the drums where we all like it. We, you know, it's not like, it's not like we got into this to become rock stars. A lot of people got into the drums because they like the drums. They actually like the physical activity and the puzzle, like we said earlier, of the drums. And then you see other drummers like, we both think the same thing about this. Yeah. And it could be a metal drummer, a jazz drummer, a pop drummer, and we're all like, I totally see that you have that same affliction that I have with the drum. We love this thing, right? So
I love that affliction.
And that brings it back to what we're doing right now, is that you might think I'm here because I'm humble, but I'm here because you reached out to me and said you want to chat about drums and post that so other people that are drummers can also, listen to us chat about drums. I'm like, that's what I would do at a coffee shop down the street anyway. If a couple of drummers were in town, we'd all just get together and talk about drums anyway. So absolutely. I don't think there's been any scientific studies, but I think there's a general consensus that this is specific to the drums. Because I've had many instrumentalists tell me that guitarists do not do this, and keyboardists definitely do not do this. And if you go to a NAMM show, have you ever been to the NAMM show?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You go to the NAMM show, it's just hordes of drummers walking around together, broing out.
Yeah.
Dude, I haven't seen you forever. Bruce, let's go over to the whatever booth. And like drummers just moving around, and then the occasional saxophonist and the occasional guitarist. But like the drummers are moving around like a gang. And you're like, that is weird. And I remember back at UM, we would do that. Back at the Miami, it'd be like we'd be all studying in the music school, and then we'd all go to lunch, and there'd be 18 drummers sitting at one lunch table, all eating together, and then a piano player off in the corner and a singer off in the corner. And I'm like, well, why do drummers do that? Well, we all congregate and talk about drums and, nylon tip versus wood tip and all these weird things that we talk about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with more. The affliction is like calling it that is the funniest thing, because I agree with you. Like, and I've talked about that now in a couple of these conversations where it's like we are the only group of musicians that generally and pretty consistently root for each other too. We might have different again, nylon versus wood tip or Sabian versus Zildjian, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has their own flavor. But I think one of the great things about it is guitar players are like, well, I use a 9-gauge string or a 10-gauge string. And they usually have their method, and they don't really kind of share with each other. There's not like this, how can we lift each other up mentality? Whereas like for a drummer, I could be like, hey, how did you do that fill? Let me show you. And we'll sit down at a kit together and show me how you did the fill. Or, hey, how did you practice your time? Well, yeah, let me show you. And there's like this, and that's the genesis of this whole thing, right? Like the Arizona drummer stuff started off as let me play drums and I'll share it with people. But what this turned into is, especially as I've gotten back into the industry and working with more professionals, is like, God, there is this hunger and desire for learning how to be a better drummer, how to be more professional, how to get a gig and keep a gig, and kind of refine some of those non-tangible skills, not just the ones behind the kit. And that's where a lot of this came from, is how can I share the wealth of knowledge and with the folks who've been out there doing this and are humble. And there's a reason I asked that question, which is to hopefully also teach, the people listening on the call of like, it shouldn't be about being famous or about being wealthy. If those things come, great. That's awesome. Those are side effects. Those are bonus. Awesome. It should come from here, like the love of this craft. And like if you truly lead with love and passion for what you're doing in musicianship and this interest of wanting to be the best player you can be and the best collaborator, and then all that stuff will come. Like it'll if you're putting yourself out there and you're doing the work and you're being disciplined, that stuff will come. But it starts here. You can't skip this part. There's no shortcuts. You can't. And there are people out there, maybe not the best drummers in the world, but the way I like to say it is the best drummer is an employed one, because at the end of the day, like if that's what you want to do, like that's the goal. Is I want to be an employed drummer. If you want to just play drums in your room and have a good time, then do it. There's nothing wrong with that either. And I have the same amount of respect for that full spectrum, because we all have the same affliction, and there's no remedy other than getting back there and taking our therapy of getting in that flow zone of playing. And I know we're getting close on time, so I'll try to keep it to like 2 more questions if that's all right. I don't want to hold you hostage, but I have to ask this question, because when I remember watching this gear rundown video that you did, and I think it was your DW kit with like, I don't remember if the shells were stainless steel, if it was just wrapped in stainless steel. And you're kind of going through your cymbal setup, you're just kind of going through everything and like how you have it set up and everything. And obviously it's going to change from gig to gig, whether I think in this case it was for Morrissey, but then obviously for Shakira it's different, so on and so forth. But how much of your setup is tailored to what the artist wants you to have versus what you want to have, like your personal setup, and how does those things differ from like what you have at home in your studio to what you're taking out on the road with you, and kind of how do you see those things differently?
Yeah, that's a great question, because if anyone follows my rigs for different gigs, they're all slightly different, and they are completely 100% catered toward the set list of the artist. Not even what the artist wants me to have, but the selection of songs and arrangements for that. Mm-hmm. So I build a kit. If you looked at my home studio, it's a kick, 1 rack tom, 2 floors, a main snare, a side snare, a double pedal, a hi-hat, ride, 2 crashes, and a china. That's it. That's what, if you ask me to do any gig, that's what I would like to show up with. And it
Okay.
basically is like a kind of stems off of like the Bonham kind of approach to setting up a drum set. Big John Bonham fan. So
Yeah.
that's it.
We're here.
That's where I start with. And if you look at any of my drum sets, you'll see that baked in somewhere. That setup is in there. Anything else was added because of the set list.
Mm-hmm.
And Morrissey, I had a giant suspended gong bass drum. Why? Because there were a couple songs where like, okay, this song ends with a gong bass drum. Do you have one? I'm like, I actually do have one in my warehouse. Do you want me to ship it out? Like, yeah, please ship it out. I'm like, all right. So I have a gong bass drum over here, or an actual 40-inch China gong behind me because they want this. This song starts off with a gong hit. I'm like, it does? They're like, yeah. They're like, do you have one? I'm like, I do have one in my warehouse. Let me ship it out. So I ship it out. And you're thinking, why is this guy playing with a gong behind him? It's like, because apparently this song starts with a gong hit.
Yeah.
Things like that. Or this song has a bunch of samples. Do you have an SPDSX pad? I'm like, I do. Let me get that out of my basement. I bring that along. So everything is because of the set lists. The Perry Farrell gig, I did that for a while. That was a setup that was similar, but it was different because of the songs. If you do Pets, there's a cut, 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 cut. You need that sound. That like little, I don't know what he used in recording. It might have been a bongo or something on quarter notes, but I set a little micro tom up just for that song because that is the sound of that song, Pets.
Yeah.
And then the Shakira thing, it's because, there are some songs where I have to play percussion. There are some songs where I have to play electronics, and there's some songs where I have to play acoustic rock drums. And she wants those elements. She wants, this song has to be rock. This song has to be electronic. This song, I want you to do some Arabic percussion stuff. I'm like, all right, I'll have all of that on my riser, and we'll have that ready to go. So yeah, it's the set list. That's where it's coming from.
Have you ever had an artist say like, hey, I know you have this sparkle blue drum set, but I don't want that. I want it to be more muted. I want it to be black or something. You mentioned like the earthy kind of kit that needed to be in the front. And I'm only asking that because, again, part of our job as drummers is to consider the vision of the artist. So have you had the situation where it's like, hey, I want you to have this specific type of look when you're back there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we were talking much earlier about my friend Rafa Badia and about groove and about sound, about recording and making sure that you're grooving and don't compensate. That is not to say that visuals are not important. We are putting on a live show. People don't buy tickets and go to an arena and close their eyes for 2 hours and listen. They listen and they watch. So to think that they're gonna be there and visuals don't matter is stupid. That's just stupid. Then you're being some kind of stuck up artist. Like it's only about the music. No, it's a visual thing too. What do your instruments look like? What do your outfits look like? What do you look like when you're playing your instruments? These are things that people take into account and they add to the show. They shouldn't take place for the music. But if the music is solid and then it looks cool too, forget it. Now you're putting on a killer show. So that being said, I think what a drum set looks like is important. We started off with saying I used to watch MTV. I would watch everything from Warrant to Striper to all these things. I would look out. I mean, forget it. Alex Van Halen. Hello, Alex Van Halen's drum sets. Every tour, you're like, oh my God. It was important. So I think about that, and I will very often talk to an artist or show designer or an MD saying, what's the look of this tour? Is it colorful? Is it classy? Is it, woodsy and earthy? Is it, crazy? And when I started playing with Morrissey, I sent him a photo of every DW kit I own and said, you choose, And he's like, I like these two. Let's do this one for this tour, and let's do this one for the next leg. I'm like, cool. Shakira, I said, what's the theme of this tour? They said, I think everything's going to be all white. I'm like, okay. So DW made me an all white kit for the tour. We were maybe 2/3 the way through the rehearsals, and then they changed the color. everything on stage is going to be chrome. Fortunately, I didn't have to call up DW and say, make me a chrome kit, because I already had one. But I would have felt horrendous if I had to call them up and say, dudes, I got bad news. We have to change the color of everything on stage. Fortunately, in my warehouse in LA, I already had a stainless steel kit. So I said, let's swap it out, and no problems here. But that happened. It just happened. They changed the look on stage. And it's important. It's important. Your outfit, your hairstyle, it all comes into account. It shouldn't replace musicianship.
Yeah.
I think music is first, but it's like the icing on the cake is if it looks cool too.
Yeah, it enhances the visual, right? It goes back to the band is a unit. Like, they sound cohesive, they look cohesive, they're having a good time. Like, if I look up at the drummer and he's smiling, I'm like, it's infectious. I'm gonna start smiling. If I look at the drummer and it's like, he's struggling, I'm like, ooh, you might not be prepared. But it's one of those things where it's like, again, that visual is important. It could sound incredible, but they don't, like, they pay to get the connection. They pay to feed off of the energy. And that's a reason why I got this ridiculous double bass kit for the YouTube stuff, because why not? Like, it's a camera, there's lights, it looks really cool, but when I go live in here, in my closet, there's a second drum set, one kick, one tom, two racks, basically the same setup, you just, detailed, but it's in cases, tuned, ready to go. Because again, if I get the call, that's the one I'm taking, not this. Like, because I want the professionalism, the consistency, all the things we talked about. But I know we're basically at time, so I'm going to close it up with a question and then a big thank you. The last question I'll say is, and hopefully we can do a part 2 of these. I'm starting to realize the more interviews I'm doing, an hour to talk about drums is never enough time. You just because of our affliction, but. What I'll say is, what do you think? Oh God, there's so many good ones on here. I really thought about this. Again, back to preparation. I wanted to glean as much. Oh yeah, but that's okay, because so am I. So but this is why drummers have a good time when we get together, because we talk about these things. But I'll let you pick. How about this? I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I'll let you pick. Usually I do a little speed round at the end, but these are just too good. So this is about the next generation of drummers. These are about the people who want to be employed and be professionals and follow the blueprint that you have kind of put out there of, like, this is what it takes to be professional. So the first question that you can choose from is, what is one skill besides actually playing the drums that young drummers should develop? And then the other question is, what do you think it is that separates drummers who actually make it in being employed and make it in the sense of, I have found success, how I define it as a drummer, versus those who want that success but don't actually ever get there and achieve it?
Those are both good questions. Because you said we're running out of time, let me go with the second one.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question though?
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think it is that separates those drummers who make it, they find that success, they are able to obtain employment and live their dream, and those who want it but just never quite get there?
Okay. I study Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there's an expression that they say a lot there, which is a black belt is simply a white belt that didn't quit. And I think that most of the professional musicians I know that I tour with, that I perform with, local gigs and play in studios with, are just musicians that never gave up. They're either because they're stubborn or dumb, or they had no other plan Bs or whatever. They just said, well, it's not going well, but I'm going to keep doing it. Well, it's going really well. I'm going to keep doing it. That's not going well again. I'm going to keep doing it. It's strange that we all have that in common. That through high times and low times, we just kept doing it. If you have a legitimate escape plan, you're probably going to take it. I can go work for my dad's company and make 4 times as much money as I'm doing right now. Why would you not do that? It's like you'd be stupid not to do that, But I didn't have one. I didn't give myself one. It's not like I prevented myself one, but I just never thought of anything else I would do other than this. And I was never to the point where I was just living out of my car saying, what the fuck? That never happened. I kept on doing it. And so there's a lot of that. I have to admit, a lot of it is luck. And that's something that's unfortunate, but that is life. It's not just this. It's in sports, it's in
Yeah.
stock trading, it's in everything. It's how hard you work, and it's also a little bit of luck. Because I do know many drummers who have worked their butts off, who have never really gotten to where they want to be. And you cannot say it's because they didn't work hard enough, because they did.
Yeah.
I have seen it. I'm like, those guys play amazingly. They practice. They're so talented. They practice, but I never really got the gig that gave them the gig, which gave them the gig, which gave them the gig. A lot of it is like a ladder. You work hard, you get one gig that leads you to another, leads you to another, leads you to another, leads you to another. And some guys, they had one gig and they just kind of stayed here, and it never climbed for them. That I hate. I hate that I see some of my friends like that. And I've tried to actively try to lift people up one notch if I could, he'd be good for this or he'd be good for that. But it's hard. So I think as a young drummer, you have to keep those two things in mind. One, if you really, really want to be like those, if you look up to a drummer who's 50, 60, 70 years old, you're like, oh, that's my guy. Realize he just never quit.
Yeah.
He had many chances to get out of the music industry, and he said, nah, I'm going to give it another couple years. And he definitely had enough connections that led him from here to here to here. So if you think music, it's not exactly this cut and dry, but I say it this way because it's easy to remember. Music is 50% how you play, 50% who you know, right? You must get that giant chunk of the pie chart going with how well you play, because that's important. Yeah. If you don't play well, you might get a gig, you're not going to keep a gig. You can get through the door, but you're not going to keep the gig if you can't do the job. But then, how are you going to get the gig if you don't know anyone? So you must know people. You work on your craft and make sure you know other people in your industry. Be friends with them, stay friendly with them, and then that's it. And then we just have to see what life hands you at that point. That's the best that you can do.
Absolutely, and to your point, luck is going to come, and however it's going to come, but you can increases your chance of that luck by creating those relationships, creating those connections, putting in the work. But again, to your point, so a lot of times it's right person, right time, right place, right fit, whatever it is. I'll say this really quick because I don't want to hold you hostage. The Daughtry thing was, I just happened to be on Instagram and I saw their drummer had announced he was leaving. I reached out to Chris and said, hey, do you need a drummer? And he's like, yeah, send in an audition. But that's what it was. Like, had I not been on my phone, scrolling, found that, reached out, I could have just said, you know what, that's not something I can do. Like, I could play the tunes, sure, but no, I just reached out. Now, Chris is a good friend of mine, even though I did, again, the gig doesn't matter. I've made these relationships, and Anthony, who did get the gig, Anthony Gazelle, great friend. First interviewee of this series, because again, we have that connection in place, and it's one of those things where you can create your own luck, but I think patience, hard work, discipline, all the things we've talked about throughout this call. And it's funny, I actually had a whole separate section I want to talk to you about with jiu-jitsu, but we didn't get to it. We will next time we talk. But, it's just about not quitting. Just keep working. And that's true for drummers, for anybody who's maybe not a drummer listening to this or watching this. If you want to achieve anything in the world that we're in, whether it's a black belt in jiu-jitsu or, for me, fitness was a big thing, like getting in shape or playing an instrument or being an actor, whatever it is, the key, the secret sauce is be really good and just don't quit. Obviously make those connections, but just don't give up. If you give up on yourself, that's the surefire way to not get there.
So I'm really happy.
And that being said, there's nothing wrong with giving up if you have a better option.
Yeah.
It's not like giving up drums is not failure.
Yeah.
If you play drums for 10 years and you're a great drummer, and then you say, you know what? I want to be a chef. And you become a great chef. You're not a failed drummer.
Exactly.
You did it great for 10 years. You shouldn't look at, I must punish myself with the drums. It is something that you do. It is
Yeah.
something to do. And then if life offers you another road and you want to take it unashamedly. You don't say like,
Yeah.
I failed. I'm a loser. No, you're not. You're
No.
a great drummer. And I think that, you only have one life. Why torture yourself playing the drums if you have another option that would be even better? It's
Yeah.
just, I'm saying that what do drummers have in common that have long careers? They didn't take another option. They just
Absolutely.
stayed with it, even when they said, well, why don't you do this? Nah, I'm going to stick with the drums a little longer. That's what we all have in common,
Mhm.
is that no one offered me a really great, cushy job doing anything else. So I had to stick with this.
You're like, I got to do this.
I got to
Oh
do
my
it. It's all I
gosh.
do.
All right, well, like I said, I won't hold you hostage, but what I will say to kind of close this up is just, I started the top of this interview with this. I'm going to close it. This has been awesome. Like, again, I'm truly honored. What I think of you as a drummer, yes, like I've said this a couple times now, groove, skill, all that comes to mind, but the first thing that comes to mind that I associate with you is professionalism. Like, to me, you set that bar of just, here is what it looks like when you're playing the show, here's how you arrange your parts, here's how you prepare for the show, like all of the things that we talked about, and then some of the research I did outside of this, even over the years, like to me, professional and Brendan just go harmoniously together. And so to get to have you on this podcast where we talk about, or interview, whatever you want to call it, but where we got to talk about drums, which we both love, the professionalism required to do that successfully and be employed, but then also just the affliction we share, the passion we have, all the different things in between. I'm just truly honored, and I just want to say thank you for the time. I know we went a little over, so again, you've been very gracious, and I really look forward to hopefully, a lot of the interviews have ended with me saying we need a part 2 because there's just so much we could talk about. But again, I think a lot of the listeners, the people who watch this, are just going to get so much out of this, and I personally appreciate just you making the time to have the conversation, and I'll continue to stay contacted with you and send you fun drum things, and we'll continue to stay close. But just thank you again. I really appreciate it.
I said this earlier, but it's my pleasure, really. Thank you for doing this too. And if this helps anyone out there at all or interests anyone, then we achieved our goal today. And
Exactly.
yeah, I'd be totally down to do this again if you want.
Absolutely. We gave those with our affliction the little fix they needed on this Sunday. And but yeah, I'll reach out to you to do a part 2 in the future. But for now, thank you. And so I want to say a big happy Father's Day to you as well.
Thank you.
And thank you for making this happen on Father's Day. And thank you, seriously, Brendan. I appreciate it. Are you guys playing tonight?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow we'll have a great day off and a killer show tomorrow. And I'll talk to you soon. But thank you, seriously, so much.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
All right, great. Well, then I'll talk to you soon.
Cool.